ask Elizabeth L Cline. She's a journalist and the author of The Conscious Closet, the revolutionary guide to looking good while doing good. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be on.
So, a fascinating subject. Let's start with this report by thredUP that says that by 2028, the used fashion market is set to skyrocket in value to $64 billion in the US. Meanwhile, fast fashion will only reach $44 billion. So what should we keep in mind when comparing these two markets?
Well, I think that what we're seeing is, first of all, a bit of a backlash against fast fashion and the rise of the conscious consumer. So I think that just in general, there's a growing percentage of consumers who are interested in shopping sustainably and shopping more mindfully, but they also want access to high quality, fashionable clothes. We're also seeing really the rise or maybe the sophistication of online shopping. Because if you really think about it, thredUP and TheRealReal, those companies have been around for a long time. And they have just now really mastered the logistics of selling a lot of secondhand inventory, and they've been able to replicate the experience of shopping retail and buying something new, except for they're selling a secondhand product. So I think it's just the convergence of a couple of different really interesting forces.
And it's interesting because, as we know, secondhand clothing, especially in retail, is literally nothing new. We usually find it in charity-related shops. We had eBay and some of these smaller person-to-person exchanges like Craigslist. But obviously times are changing. So what's driving this growth and interest, especially for startups?
You know, I think that it really is like everything else within the so-called sharing economy. It's about tapping into value, latent value, because we know that most consumers only wear a very small percentage of what's in their wardrobe. And a lot of consumers, especially people that are very interested in shopping for Instagram, they only wear their clothes maybe once, twice, 3 times, and they push it back to the back of their closet. And what that means is you have an incredible supply of fashionable clothing that's it's barely worn. So any company that can tap into that reserve of fashion and make money off of it is going to do quite well, I think.
And it's not just startups. I mean, we've seen that US department store Neiman Marcus also entered the resale market when it bought a stake in online secondhand store Fashion File. And they actually became the first major retailer to claim a stake in the broad resale market. How do you think it's going to fare in the resale market?
I think that that is such a super interesting move because really until now the luxury market has been standoffish when it comes to resale, and I think they've been a little bit nervous that resale players were going to cannibalize their sales. But what we're starting to see is that resale actually cultivates customers for high-end products, because a lot of people, their first introduction to being able to afford designer or high-end products is through the resale and e-commerce market. So I think that what Neiman Marcus is doing is really smart, because really what they're doing is cultivating the next generation of luxury consumers through the secondhand market.
Now, it certainly is different, because we've seen certain secondhand items like luxury handbags and certain vinyl records not just maintaining their value, but increasing. So what's the key to picking the right products or niches so that you can appeal to the right kind of consumer?
Right. I mean, I think that anyone that really nails the resale market in fashion has to know what brands hold their value. And it changes all the time, but in general, most of the luxury brands hold their value the best. It changes a little bit from season to season, but really these resale websites, they're so sophisticated at it now, and they have so much data about what sells well that I think it's the online players that are best positioned, because they are able to collect data on what is selling.
Now, as we look internationally, some regions have these deeply held cultural beliefs about this sort of notion around, new items being the best and secondhand items being something inferior. Can you talk about how resellers are going about really trying to change that mindset?
I think that it's changed really swiftly, and it's just through exposure and experience, and part of it is just word of mouth, because a resale shopper immediately You know, they see that they get the package in the mail, the product is high quality, there's no signs of wear on it, they're able to afford something much nicer than they would have otherwise at a fraction of the price. So there's really not much to get over anymore, because part of why secondhand products were stigmatized is because really it was associated with getting a lower quality product, or you would have to do a lot of work, you would have to dig through the charity thrift store to find a treasure. But in the resale market, the work has been taken out of the equation. So you're basically just presented all of the gems, and you can kind of go crazy and shop to your heart's content. So I think that consumers realize that it's a much more dynamic way to shop, and that you really don't have to sell them on it once you kind of tell them what the concept of it is.
And just quickly, would you say that this marketplace is saturated? And if not, where do you see the most opportunity?
I think, you know what, I think in the US what we've seen is it's starting to consolidate. So there are companies like thredUP and TheRealReal that have figured it out the best. They have really great logistics, and they have great customer service. And some of the smaller online players have started to go away. But I think that there's a huge market for brick and mortar resale and consignment stores locally, no matter where you're located, and that the market for that is huge, I think.
All right, thank you for joining us. Elizabeth L Cline there, journalist and the author of The Conscious Closet, the revolutionary guide to looking good while doing good.